Hello and welcome to my April 2023 dividend portfolio recap. My name is Troy. I'm 28 years old. I live in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and my goal is to retire early at 50 years old. At the conclusion of each month, I like to do these videos to outline the moves I've made and my progress towards financial freedom and my goal of early retirement. A lot of exciting things happened this month, so let's get right to it. First, let's take a look at my taxable account here on Fidelity, aka my retire early account. Over here on the left, you can see my 11 holdings, and I wanted to quickly outline the account balance and how it has grown so far this year. Beginning of the year, the account balance was $25,131.92. Concluding March, my account balance was sitting at $28,138.82. And now, concluding April, my account balance now sits at $37,795.40. Some things I wanted to note here is that I was able to max out my Roth IRA as of April 20th, which opens me up to being able to add to this taxable account. Starting in April, I made the decision to move my emergency fund from my money market account with my bank to the cash holding SPAXX with Fidelity, as my bank's money market was getting me a depressing 0.1% interest, while the current yield of SPAXX is 4.5%. My emergency fund is 5 months worth of expenses, which is $7,000, but I'm currently only at $6,000 of that into SPAXX since I need to keep $1,000 in my money market with my bank to avoid the fees. I think I'm going to end up closing that account with my bank in the coming days, which will take me down to just a checking account with 1 month's worth of expenses in it, which will allow me to move all $7,000 from my emergency fund over to SPAXX and get that sweet 4.5% interest. This will take discipline on my end not to touch any of that $7,000, but I know I can do it since it'll make me more investable money in interest each month. With that being said, I was able to add $2,849.65 in investable money to this taxable account for the month of April, including the $28.56 I received in credit card rewards using the Fidelity credit card. Next, I wanted to go over my biggest winners in this account. My biggest winner in this account is ExxonMobil, that's up 60.04% or $1,237.61. My second biggest winner is Nvidia, that's up 40.7% or $834.10. And rounding out the top three, we have Starbucks, that's now up 19.34% or $496.01. Now, with me being fully transparent, I also want to show you the stocks in the bottom three with my biggest losers. My biggest loser is currently Pool Corp, that is down 7.99% or $204.27. The runner-up for an award that you don't want to win is NextEra Energy, that's down 5.51% or $112.99. And then my third worst stock is actually still in the green, so that's always nice to see, and that stock is APD, that's up 0.84% or $17.38. Lastly, let's look down here at the bottom of the screenshot to see that this account is now up 14.7% or $3,771.85. All right, next, let's check to see how this account stacks up versus the three major indexes year to date. On this screenshot, you'll be able to see two different rates of return, time weighted and money weighted. Simply put, time weighted is best used if there is no money going in or out of the account, while money weighted is best used if there is. If you all would like a video explaining these in more detail, let me know down in the comments. Since money is now being added to the account, the money weighted best fits my situation. You can see that I have a year-to-date return of 14.41%, and that is only being outperformed by the NASDAQ so far year to date. That is up an impressive 17.05%. Next, let's head over to my dividend tracking spreadsheet to check out the buys I made for April. Again, keeping in mind that none of my own money was added to this account until April 20th, here is where we stand for the April purchases. First up is Apple, where I spent $62.75 on 0.378 shares at an average cost of $165.78 per share, adding an additional 35 cents in forward income. Then is AbbVie, where I spent $44.42 on 0.283 shares at an average cost of $159.25, adding $2.24 in forward income. Then we have APD, that I spent $38.30 on to get 0.132 shares at an average cost of $290.63, which adds $2.65 in forward income. Next is Illinois Toolworks, where I spent $35.35 to get 0.201 shares at an average cost of $200 $335.98, adding $1.98 in forward income. Then we get the Microsoft, where I spent $61.79 on 0.211 shares at an average cost of $290.18, adding $1.03 in forward income. Moving on to Next Era Energy, where I spent $38.52 on 0.504 shares at an average cost of $77.31, adding 71 cents in forward income. Then we go to Nvidia, where I spent $47.77 on 0.176 shares at an average cost of $271.21, adding a nice 6 cents in forward income. Then comes Pool Corp, where I spent $48.36 to get 0.142 shares at an average cost of $340.70, adding $1.51 in forward income. Then we move on to Starbucks, where I spent $48.28 on 0.433 shares at an average cost of $110.25, adding 80 cents in forward income. Second to last is Visa, where I spent $39.91 on 0.173 shares at an average cost of $231.68, adding 68 cents in forward income. And lastly, we have ExxonMobil, that I spent $35.02 on to get 0.3 shares at an average cost of $116.63, adding $1.38 in forward income. In total, I was able to spend $500.47 to get 2.933 shares in the last 7 trading days of April, which results in $13.38 in added forward income. Next, let's see what this did to the share counts in this account. Beginning 2023, this account had a total of 167.947 total shares, or an average of 15.267 shares per holding. Concluding last month, the same account had a total of 169.02 shares, or an average of 15.365 shares per holding. And at the close of this month, I'm now sitting at 171.953 total shares, or 15.632 average shares per holding. Going forward, you're really going to get to see this account grow now that all the money I do invest for the rest of the year is going to be funneled right into this account. Next, let's look at the current yield of this account. My yield on cost for this portfolio is sitting at 2.01%, which remains the same from last month. And while there's no change there to discuss, there are some changes to my cost basis that I wanted to outline. My cost basis in Apple went from $153.18 per share to $153.45 per share, which is an increase of 27 cents. My cost basis in AbbVie went from $126.34 per share to $126.76 per share, which is an increase of 42 cents. Cost basis in APD went from $291.92 per share to $291.88 per share, which is a reduction by 4 cents. Cost basis in ITW went from $218.66 per share to $219.03 per share, which is an increase of 37 cents. My cost basis in Microsoft went from $280.04 per share to $280.30 per share, which is an increase of 26 cents. My cost basis in Next Era Energy went from $81.19 per share to $81.10 per share, which is a reduction by 9 cents. My cost basis in Nvidia went from $195.94 per share to $197.22 per share, which is an increase by $1.28. My cost basis in Pool Corp went from $382.69 per share to $381.79 per share, which is a great reduction of 90 cents per share. My cost basis in Starbucks went from $95.50 per share to $95.76 per share, which is an increase by 26 cents. My cost basis in Visa went from $209.32 per share to $209.70 per share, which is an increase by 38 cents. And lastly, my cost basis in ExxonMobil went from $73.48 per share to $73.94 per share, which is an increase of 46 cents. In this case, an increase in money is not what we're looking for, but when your holdings are doing well, they cost more than they used to, so it's par for the course. Next, I wanted to show you my projected annual income for this account. Beginning in 2023, I had a yearly projection of $494.51, which comes to $41.21 per month, or $1.35 per day. As of the end of March, those numbers went to a yearly projection of $506.05, which is $42.17 per month, or $1.39 per day. And now, concluding this month, I'm sitting at projections of $514.49 for the year, which comes to $42.87 per month, or $1.41 per day. As mentioned previously, the growth of this account year to date has been slow because I aim to get my Roth IRA maxed out to start the year, but now that that's been completed, be sure to stay tuned with the monthly recaps for the exciting growth of this account. Next, let's see who paid me in April and how much I made in passive income. In total, I received 1 dividend payment and 1 interest payment. On April 13th, I received $12.05 from ITW that was dripped, getting me 0.052 free shares. And on April 28th, I received $21.86 as an interest payment on the cash sitting in the account. The 1, 4, 7, 10 months are my slowest months when it comes to dividend income, but next month I'm expecting 5 dividend payments and that reliable interest payment. Next, let's check on the totals and year-over-year growth of the passive income generated by this account. Here, I like to check to see how the growth of my income is going when compared to itself. In April of 2021, I brought in $4.52. In April of 2022, I saw that drop 1.8% to $4.44 because of the change in investments, which brings us to April of 2023, where I brought in $33.91, which is a 663.7% year-over-year increase. Next, let's cover the account that's gotten most of the attention year to date, the Roth IRA. As mentioned earlier in the video, I was able to get this account maxed out for 2023, my third year in a row, as of April 20th with that $6,500. While this is 15 days later than I was able to do last year, not having a job for all of January, having my first child, and the limit going from 6,000 to 6,500, I think I did pretty good. Anywho, enough with the chit chats and pats on the back, let's get to the numbers. This account has 7 holdings, which you can see over here on the left of the screen. And beginning the year, the account balance was sitting at $46,616.47. Concluding March, that bumped to $50,763.72. And now, concluding April, my balance now sits at $53,193.09. Some quick housekeeping on this account. I plan to have the remaining $7,272.39 in cash invested in this account no later than June 13th. The reason behind that date is I want to have all the funds invested before the second wave of ex-dividend dates comes through for this account, which will allow me to get the full dividend for June, September, and December. After adding $0 to this account in January and February, I was able to add all $6,500 between just March and half of April. Next, I want to go over my biggest winners for this account. My biggest winner in this account is VOO, that's up 1.91% or $330.52. My second best performer is in the red, and that is QQQM, that's down 0.61% or $29.32. And rounding out the top 3, we have SCHD, that is also down 2.08% or $98.08. Now let's see the flip side of the coin with my biggest losers. My biggest loser is currently QQQJ, that is down 9.73% or $471.70. Second place goes to Tesla, that's down 6.94% or $375.55. And my third worst stock is SPYG, that is down 3.76% or $184.40. Honorable mention to VNQ, who was not in the top 3 or the bottom 3, but I just felt bad for leaving it out. That one is down 3.22% or $156.32. Lastly, let's look down here at the bottom of the screenshot to see that this account is now down 2.1% or $984.85. While it does suck to be down in any account at any time, it's always important to note that this account does not need to fit my timeline of early retirement, as I do not have access to it until 59 and a half. So I have additional time to not only accumulate in this account, but also for it to rebound and grow for me. Next, let's check to see how this account stacks up versus the 3 major indexes year to date. Again, we have the time-weighted and money-weighted returns, and we'll use the money-weighted returns since cash has been added this year. That results in a 3.82% year-to-date return, which is only outperforming the Dow Jones so far this year. Keep coming back throughout the year to see if we can catch up to the S&P and NASDAQ before the end of the year. Now, I've had the chance to spend a lot of money in this account this month, so let's check to see what I was able to get and exactly how much I spent. As a reminder, I did a 401k conversion to begin this year, so I was spending that money to start the year, and then I added all $6,500 over the past 2 months. We are getting close to my self-set deadline to spend this money, so this was a big spending month. First up is QQQJ, where I spent $927.63 to get 37.399 shares at an average cost of $25.05, which added $7.52 in forward income. Then was QQQM, where I spent $949.02 on 7.315 shares at an average cost of $130.42, which added $36.46 in forward income. Then we move on to the crowd favorite SCHD, where I spent $1,410.34 on 19.431 shares at an average cost of $73.05, which added $98.73 in forward income. Next up was SPYG, where I spent $988.78 to get 17.822 shares at an average cost of $55.59, which added $21.84 cents in forward income. Then we had Tesla, where I spent $2,098.71 to get 12.681 shares at an average cost of $176.50. And sadly, Tesla doesn't pay a dividend. Then we moved to VNQ, where I spent $1,550.25 on 18.93 shares at an average cost of $82.25, adding $127.87 in forward income. And lastly, we get the VOO, where I spent $3,671.24 on 9.761 shares at an average cost of $377.33, which added $226.64 in forward income. In total, I was able to spend $11,595.97 to get 123.339 shares in the month of April, resulting in $519.06 in forward income. Next, let's see what those huge buys do to the share counts of this account. Beginning 2023, this account had a total of 149.6 total shares, or an average of 21.37 shares per holding. Concluding last month, the same account had a total of 370.52 shares, or an average of 52.932 shares per holding. And at the close of this month, I'm now sitting at 493.86 total shares, or 70.551 average shares per holding. As mentioned last month, this account has exploded in 2023, and while we are done adding new cash to the account for the rest of the year, we still have a little over $7,000 to invest over the next 6 or so weeks, so keep checking back on this one for those growth updates. Next, let's look at the current yield of this account and the cost basis movements for these positions. My yield on cost for this portfolio is sitting at 1.62%, which is 0.03% higher than the 1.59% yield on cost last month. There's a lot of exciting changes to the cost basis in this account I wanted to outline. The cost basis for QQQJ went from $28.25 per share to $27.52 per share, which is a reduction by 73 cents. The cost basis in QQQM went from $134.42 per share to $133.48 per share, which is a reduction by 94 cents. The cost basis in SCHD went from $74.78 to $74.11, which is a reduction by 67 cents. My cost basis in SPYG went from $59.11 per share to $58.34 per share, which is a reduction by 77 cents. My cost basis in Tesla went from $184.36 per share to $176.56 per share, which is a reduction by $7.80. My cost basis in VNQ went from $88.17 per share to $86.07 per share, which is a reduction by $2.10. And then my cost basis in VOO went from $374.55 per share to $374.88 per share, which is an increase of 33 cents. In a typical situation, I dollar cost average daily and would have been adding an even amount to each holding to keep them balanced throughout the month. However, this month, I noticed there were a large amount of my holdings that were way below their current cost basis, so I was adding a little bit more aggressively to these positions in order to lower that cost basis before I'm out of cash for 2023. I will likely do the same thing in May and see where we are at the end of this month with my cost basis. Next, let's take a look at my projected annual income for this account. Beginning 2023, I had a yearly projection of $135.64, which comes to $11.30 per month or 37 cents per day. As of the end of March, those numbers went to a yearly projection of $560.74, which is $46.73 per month, or $1.54 per day. Now, concluding this month, I'm up to exciting projections of $760.96 for the year, which comes to $63.41 per month, or $2.08 per day. Next, let's see who paid me in April and how much I made in passive income for this account. Technically, there were no dividends received in my Roth this month, as I get paid from all of my holdings in March, June, September, and December, but I did still get that interest payment from SPAXX from all the cash that remains in the account. On April 28th, I received $53.10 as an interest payment on the cash sitting in the account. Now, let's go ahead and add that into the spreadsheet and see what it does to the totals and year-over-year growth of the passive income in this account. Here, I like to check to see how the growth of my income is doing when compared to itself. I started my Roth IRA in August of 2021, so I do not have any 2021 numbers to report. And in April of 2022, I had the same holdings I do now, which we know do not pay out in April, and there was no cash in the account to get interest, so that income was also $0. Which brings us to April of 2023, where I brought in that $53.10, which starts us off right for quarter two. Before we go, I like to round up all of my information and present the portfolio as a whole. First up, let's see the share count improvement and what percentage of my portfolio is now dividend paying holdings. To start 2023, I had a total of 518.474 shares, which is an average of 23.567 shares, with 53.89% of my cash being invested in dividend paying holdings. Concluding March, I was up to a total of 747.121 shares, or an average of 33.96 shares, with 76.613% of my cash being invested in dividend holdings. And now I'm at 873.393 total shares, or an average of 39.7 shares per holding, with an exciting 82.892% of my cash being invested in dividend paying holdings. Now let's see my projected forward income for all those shares in the portfolio. Beginning the year, I had a yearly projection of $745.30, which comes to $62.11 per month, or $2.04 per day. As of the end of March, those numbers went to a yearly projection of $1,200.29, which is $100.02 per month, or $3.29 per day. Now, concluding this month, I'm up to sweet projections of $1,408.95 for the year, which comes out to $117.41 per month, or $3.86 per day. The last thing I want to cover is the total passive income received for these portfolios in April and check for growth. You can see that I actually have history going back several Aprils in this screenshot. Quickly going over them, we have April of 2018 where I made $6.01, April of 2019 where I made $19.41, which is a 223% year over year increase. Then we moved to April of 2020 where I made $18.98, which is a decrease of 2.2% year over year. Then we go to April of 2021 where I made $19.62, which was a 3.4% year over year increase. Then we moved to April of 2022 where I made $30.34, which was an increase of 54.6% year over year. And finally, this year in April, where I made a total of $87.01, which is a 186.8% year over year increase. The up and down dividend amounts from 2018 to 2020 were all from the dividends received in my 401k with my previous employer. And since I took over, it has had some nice growth. If you made it to this point in the video, first I want to say thank you, and be sure to leave your April dividend amounts in the comments down below. No amount is too small to share. As you can see, we all start somewhere. Please help me get the channel to other dividend investors by clicking the thumbs up button on the video, and then subscribe and ring the bell so you guys don't miss any of my dividend related content. And I recently made a pretty controversial video that outlines why I believe stock price doesn't really matter. Be sure to check that out right here. But until next time, see ya.